Socrates. The great philosopher Socrates was sure of only one thing, the wisdom of doubt. "I know that I do not know," he said. In this story, you'll find out what he really meant by this famous saying, and why he was a threat to the ruling class of his time because of it. Death is better than a life wrongly lived. Socrates knows that he's about to die. He's fully conscious when the poison from the hemlock cup begins to take effect. At first, he only feels a burning in his throat and a slight numbness in his lips. In a few moments, the toxin will seep into his spinal cord. It will first paralyze his feet, then his legs, then finally his chest and lungs. Visual disturbances and convulsions will start. His body will start to twitch like a landed fish. In the end, Socrates will suffocate, still fully conscious. He squints at the cup in his hands. Can anyone consciously experience his own death? Is there something about such cruelty, even about one's own death, that can satisfy curiosity, that can provide new knowledge? Socrates looks around his cell. He has been held prisoner here for weeks. Right until the end, his friends have tried to persuade him to flee. Run away? No, it's not about him. Not about his life. It's certainly not about his death. It's about justice, about having the freedom to doubt. Doubt himself, the world, and everything. Already in court, he could have chosen banishment instead of the deadly poison. And then what? No, even death is more bearable than a life wrongly lived. Socrates knows that he must die now. Not because his enemies want it that way, but because he puts courage, curiosity, justice, and the importance of doubt above everything, even his own life. I know that I do not know. Socrates was 70 years old when he drank the cup of deadly poison in the presence of his closest friends in an Athenian prison in 399 BC. The court in the city-state of Athens had ordered him to do so, and yet he was just a simple stonemason's son, a harmless old man with a white beard dressed in rags who did nothing but stroll through the marketplaces of Athens and ask questions. He was particularly good at that, asking questions. They were sometimes naive, often demanding, but always to the point, and he didn't do so in the study halls but in the marketplace, on the streets and in the taverns, where the people were. That's where Socrates was. With his constant refrain, "I know that I do not know," it is the core of his philosophy. Only those who start by admitting that they really know nothing can achieve true knowledge. That's because before new knowledge can arise, the existing knowledge must be properly doubted. It is new that all knowledge is preceded by doubt. It is always only temporary knowledge. Every thought must be questioned in order to produce a new thought. So Socrates taught doubt, and this was precisely where the ruling class of Athens saw the greatest threat to the existing order. The city-state's most political influential men felt ridiculed by this wild, bearded eccentric who placed no value at all on social standing, not even on a well-groomed appearance. Socrates was not afraid to make himself look ridiculous with his endless questions, and if this man questioned everything, would he not at some point also question the social order? That was what the powerful men of Athens feared, and so they put him on trial. In court, he was accused of failing to acknowledge the city's official gods and corrupting its youth. The last thing the politicians of Athens wanted was young people not believing in the official gods and doubting the existing political setup. Athenians were still reeling from a 30-year war against Sparta, after all. Athens was only slowly recovering from that defeat and its loss of supremacy in Greece. Socrates had only just been restored, and public order was still too fragile to allow a doubter like Socrates to wander about questioning everything. Midwife and street philosopher. It wasn't only his interrogation of the old certainties that got Socrates into so much trouble, but also the way he did it. Socrates wasn't a philosopher in the classical sense. He didn't construct grand theoretical edifices of thought. He was a philosopher without a body of work. What he did have, however, was a brilliant method. Socrates, the son of a midwife, appropriately called it midwifery. It's also called maieutic. It means Socrates didn't help a person to achieve knowledge by fighting him with words or lecturing him, but by simply asking specific questions. He helped his dialogue partner to give birth to new thoughts. In the philosophy of Socrates, the spiritual midwife, this also meant that there could never be an absolute, incontrovertible truth. Once an idea was in the world, it too had to be questioned. For Socrates, knowledge has no end. It is a process at the beginning of which, for Socrates, is the recurring principle, I know that I do not know. Killing the messenger. So Socrates' philosophy wasn't to develop a theory or body of knowledge that was beyond doubt. No, his theory was doubt itself, and he was convinced that real knowledge could only be gained in the exchange of ideas, in dialogue, not at a desk, not in an educational institution, but at the heart of a democracy, in the marketplace. Basically, Socrates was a street philosopher. He particularly liked to entangle ambitious politicians in their own contradictions. They didn't like that. Even in court, Socrates let the jurors know that he doubted their authority and their verdict. Yet he probably could have escaped his death sentence. The prosecutors demanded the death penalty. Socrates, who defended himself, was called upon to propose a lighter sentence. He was of the opinion that, in fact, he should be rewarded for his actions. In the end, he proposed a small fine. If Socrates had pleaded for banishment from Athens, he would probably have been spared death. As it was, the jury members were only able to choose between the death penalty and a fine they considered ridiculously small. They chose to sentence him to death. The genie of doubt, though, had long been out of the bottle. Socrates' death could not change that. He died, but he left behind an immortal legacy of curiosity, doubt, and great questions about what a life well lived looks like. An old, somewhat whimsical man who asked too many questions in the Athenian marketplace became the father of philosophy, and he probably didn't write down a single thought. Fortunately, his students did. One in particular ensured that Socrates' teachings would never be forgotten. His name was Plato. After listening to this story, now you know: 1. Socrates was sentenced to death because he questioned everything, and the politicians of Athens saw him as a danger to the existing order. 2. At the center of his thinking was doubt. I know that I do not know. For Socrates' constant questioning was the basic prerequisite of all knowledge. 3. Socrates called his method midwifery. He used dialogue to help the person he was talking to give birth to new thought. 4. Socrates was a philosopher without a body of work. Everything we know about his thought is through the writings of his students, including Plato. Thanks for watching my video. I would appreciate a like and subscription.